Hello there, Mandy here. Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart is not just a podcast. It's also a book, a free online grief group, and a one-on-one private coaching practice. If you are interested in learning more, visit mandykapehart.com to find out how restorative grief can help you heal heart, mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. You are listening to episode 191, titled It's Okay to Not Be Okay, with Andy Neal. If you've ever been told, go take a hike, hopefully today's conversation can place that advice into a better context that leads you down a new path and hopefully in a new, healthier direction. Today, my guest is Andy Neal, former pastor turned filmmaker, plus-size hiker and body positivity advocate, and mental health advocate. He is best known for his viral Instagram reel where he is shouting on the internet about how frickin' awesome frickin' nature is and that he's going for a stupid hike for his stupid mental health. It's silly little moments like this that hide a very profound and real story of resilience. After witnessing firsthand the absolute abysmal nature of mental health support for children in Oregon, Andy has turned his opportunity to influence the world into a mental health platform where he is passionately insisting that we need to do better for our children and for ourselves. So I hope today's conversation is one you can relate to, and certainly if you are not involved with children, there is still something wonderful in this conversation for you. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. I'm your host, Mandy, of course. And today I'm super excited to actually have another Southern Oregon local joining me here on the show. I'm speaking with Andy Neal. He's a former pastor. He's a filmmaker. He's an advocate for mental health in Oregon, especially with kids, and a huge proponent of getting our bodies outside so that we can experience the wonder and the beauty and the awe and the healing power of nature and just being a part of the world around us. So I'm so excited to have you here, Andy. Thank you so much for joining me.
Mandy, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I have admired your work and for a while now, and I think it is safe to say that you cannot Google stupid hike or stupid mental health without having hundreds of your pieces of work and videos come to the surface. How did calling hiking stupid completely change the trajectory of your
It's,
story?
it's funny because I actually put out a full-length YouTube video on that very subject today.
Perfect.
So I got into hiking at the behest of my therapist. It was 2019. I had left my former faith and career as a pastor behind in 2017. Decided immediately to go to film school. Went to film school, got a second bachelor's degree in digital cinema from Southern Oregon University. I just graduated. It was 2019, summer-ish. Didn't really know what to do with my life. I had my whole life, I was conservative, evangelical, pastor. All the answers of my life were always given to me. And now I left all that behind, and I was in this existential crisis. Like, what's going on? On top of that, I'm also dealing with, things I've never dealt with before, trauma from my past. I had a very troubled home life growing up, dealing with disordered eating, dealing with acceptance of my own body and all kinds of things. My therapist literally was like, you're looking for something. You're used to having this faith that you held on to your entire life. You had it your entire life until you were 36, 37. Why don't you just try going for a hike? Okay. And I did it and immediately fell in love with hiking. It became like my whole personality, and I was just hiking all the time. Was loving it. Graduated, from film school. I was doing, there's not a whole lot of film work to do, media work to do in Southern Oregon, especially at that time. Doing things for, different, car dealerships or people. I was producing podcasts for people, all kinds of stuff. And then 2020 hit, there was nothing to do. So I just hiked more, couldn't find any work, literally had bill collectors coming through the door. And I was just posting my hikes, posting pictures of my hikes, talking about being a bigger person, talking about how it was hard to find gear for me, how it was hard to find clothes, and just kept doing that more and more. Eventually, getting to 22, Columbia Sportswear was seeing that I was posting with all their stuff all the time, and like, hey, we like what you're doing. Would you like to be a model? And I'd already actually kind of thought about that. My social media time was about 5,000 people, which was decent. I thought that was amazing at the time, and it is. 5,000 people is a lot of people. I was like, absolutely, go to Columbia, go to the Gorge, have a my first modeling shoot ever. I've done several since then. Was with Columbia Sportswear, the largest outdoor apparel industry in the world. I fell in love with that industry, and they had me do some social media stuff for them. And then some other companies started seeing what I was doing, and they started doing it. And I was just like, oh, I really love this. I had a podcast at the time called the Hiker Podcast. I was talking about hiking all the time. Time it was it was a time on Apple Podcasts. It was the largest, most popular hiking podcast for like 6 months. It was
Mm.
going really well. But I had very low social media footprint. And then one day it was 2022, January 6th, 2022, and I was scrolling, and I saw this trend going that was going for a stupid walk for your stupid mental health. It was over on TikTok and migrated over to Instagram. I'm like, oh, everybody just basically there's this funny music in the background, and they're looking angry, and I'm gonna go for a walk, and they're just picture them going for a walk, stomping all angry, Whether the first one I saw was a guy in London doing it, and it was all over. I'm like, oh, that's easy. I can do it. I could change that up. I don't want to copy everybody's doing it. I'll do a stupid hike for my stupid mental health. So I dropped my daughter off at school. She was going to school out near Gold Hill at the time. The river is right there. I'm like, I'm gonna go here. There's like 5, 6 different spots. I can just do a quick 2, 3 second clip. I'll edit them all together, and that's what I did. And uploaded it. Thought nothing of it. Uploaded it. Went to the gym, which was 20 minutes away in Medford. I look at my phone. 10,000 views. At the time, I've never had a video hit more than like 1,000 views. Like
Yeah.
in 20 minutes, I'm like, oh dang, there's something going on here. And then it just blew up. Like media's calling me, all the local media was calling me, Yahoo News, BBC, all the outdoor brands were like, "Who is this guy?" Whoosh. Um, Ended up with 37 million views. I went in about 3 weeks. I went from 5,000 to 50,000 followers, and it just completely changed the trajectory of my life. I loved hiking. I loved film. My name on Instagram is for years has been Andy Films and Hikes because I love those two things. And it just fits because what the brands have told me is like the reason why I love what you do is not only it's funny and it's relatable, you have a lot of followers, but you know what you're doing with the camera, and so it just fits so well. And then to hear the stories from people, because the whole point about going for stupid hike or stupid mental health is doing something for yourself that you know is good for you, even though you don't want to.
Yeah.
So you get out of the car. Every one of my videos, I'm telling a story. You get out of the car, you're going on the trailhead, you're struggling, and then you get to that that waterfall, that overlook, you know, you're angry about it, but you're glad you did it and you feel good about yourself. And that just really snowballed. Lots of other people were doing it, which I'm super flattered by. And then that gave me a platform to talk about other things. Going for a stupid hike, for stupid mental health. I got to talk about hiking and hiking etiquette. Got to talk about mental health. In Oregon right now, we fluctuate between 48 and 51 for mental health services for children and teens, mental health outcomes.
Hmm.
One of the worst states, oftentimes the worst state in the nation. I've advocated. I've talked with several state representatives, state officials, senators about this issue, advocating for the governor to do something about it. And it's really just given me this platform where I'm able to do a lot of really cool stuff, and it's just kept growing and growing, getting people out in nature. I've had several videos where it's just me screaming, "Do you see this? It's freaking nature, and it's freaking awesome." That was in 23. That was like the viral outdoor sound. Everyone it had like 30,000 people use that audio. And yeah, and I leverage that into a career, and not only being an influencer working with brands like Nike, REI, Columbia Sportswear, but consulting, filming, creating content for other brands, advocating for public lands. There's been a whole bunch of cutbacks right now in public lands. Advocating and organizing demonstrations on like at Greater Lake National Park. We need to protect our public lands. These lands are sacred. And it's become mental health in the outdoors, and body positivity especially has become my life's work, letting people know that all bodies deserve to be outdoors and fitness spaces, no matter what body you have, where you're at. And these spaces are healing not only for your physical body but for your mental health. And it has been a whirlwind. In the midst of that, I have three kids adopted from foster care. Our two oldest have special needs. They were abused and neglected. People say, "Oh, you're exaggerating." No, I'm not exaggerating. They were abused and neglected in every way you could think of by their biological family before we adopted them. And on top of being neurodivergent, and so getting them the services they need in Oregon has been one of the greatest struggles in our lives. And we've had to deal with some really scary things with our kids. Um, and because of my platform, I've been able to get more access to services for them than most parents, which is really sad.
Hmm.
And that's something I want to change. There's one other TikToker whose her story is very similar to our family as far as the adopted from foster care system, weren't told about everything that happened in their past, and there's all these things, and they can't get into services. Literally mirror what our story is, except we have two kids. I'm mostly on Instagram. She had one, and mostly on TikTok. And we're both have been able to get our kids services that other people haven't been able to get, um, because we have a soapbox, because we can call up our state senator and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" Because I call up, our local newspaper and I'm saying, "Hey, they're doing this," and they make a call like, "Hey, tell me about this. I want to write a story about it." And all of a sudden, things that we were trying to get for our kids magically happen.
Yeah.
Um, it shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't have to be an influencer or a celebrity to get your kids the mental health services they need, or rich and just be able to, pay for it out of pocket. Problem is that in Oregon, even if you're rich, there's just not the services here. Like, you have to send your kid out of state.
Yeah.
Um, so that's my story. Reader's Digest version. There's a lot into it, but the last 3, 4 years especially have been quite the whirlwind.
Yeah. And all because you took the seemingly innocuous advice from a therapist to go take a hike, which
Yep.
when you said that, I kind of laughed because I'm like, man, when I give people basic insight or instruction that lands as simply as, hey, get outside, go touch grass, there's reasons behind it. There are
Hmm.
neurological, biological reasons we want you to do these things and move your body, but it's so easy to write off because we don't necessarily have the bandwidth to recognize I'm resisting this because of a million different reasons, not because it's bad advice or bad insight, but because of my own like anxiety about will it do anything for me? Does it actually
Hmm.
fix anything? Well, no, it's not going to fix a damn thing, but it's foundational
Yep.
for the process that you're about to embark upon. And for you to have such a completely different life now, what, 6 years later,
Hmm.
and to your point, making changes that shouldn't be so difficult to make for your family and impacting other families through it too. I can't help but just be so appreciative that you were humble enough to say, fine, I'll go outside. Fine. It's stupid. Like that resistance and that young part of us that doesn't want to do the thing that we're told, even though
Hmm.
we're like, fine, I guess it'll be fine. It's so beautifully relatable. And I think that that's what has opened up all the aspects of your advocacy and the work that you've done, to make you relatable, right? Going viral didn't do the thing. It's who you are on the other side of that video
Yeah.
going out that brings people in and says like, okay, well, maybe this is possible for me to make a change
Yeah.
too.
And that's the related. I really think the message behind it is relatability. We all have done stuff for ourselves that we knew was good and we were told by someone to do and we didn't want to do it and we had a
Yeah.
bad attitude about it. For our kids, let's clean their room. You know, for the doctor, eat your veggies. Whatever. This thing's good for you, even though you don't like it. But for me, I fell in love with it, and it's brought so much good into my life. And that's why I'm such an advocate for the outdoors and protecting public lands, because these spaces have changed me so much, and I want to make sure everyone has access to them. Even those who the outdoors aren't free. People are like, oh, the outdoors are free. Going outside, yeah, it's free, but if you want to go, Crater Lake National Park, it's going to cost you $30 to get in,
Yep.
or $100 a year for a pass, plus the 2 hour drive. That's a tank of gas or half a tank of gas. So how can we make these spaces more equitable? How can we make them more accessible? Free park passes, shuttles, rides. What can we do so everyone can get the benefits of these places? Um, and also just encouraging people. I love going to big cities and doing the Stoop Hyperstoop mental health video, whether it's Griffin Park in LA or Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. It's like, hey, you got these spaces. You don't have to go out in the wilderness. You have these spaces. Take a bus and go hike, to Griffith Park. Go hike, if you're in New York, Central Park, wherever. These green spaces are important. Even here in Medford, Roxy Ann's, you have places you can go. Nashland, Lithia Park. Take advantage of these spaces because they truly are healing. Touch grass is such a Gen Z thing, a Gen A thing, but it's so true. And the reason it's resonated is because it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I want to give as much time as we can to the idea of supporting mental health in our kids because I work with children too, like full time. I'm not a full time children's advocate, but I work with kids through all kinds of different means. And I think that our generation struggles to resonate with where kids are at because our pain, our grief, our troubles, our frustrations were minimized. Our
Hmm.
parents didn't know how to care for themselves in that capacity and then didn't pass anything useful on. And oh God, that's such a broad statement to say, but realistically, our parents are now learning too the importance of mental health support and
Yep.
even considering the mind as separate from the physical body to that degree that it deserves different attention.
Yep.
How are you going beyond the frustration as a parent, and you mentioned making phone calls to state senators and representatives as well, but how are you on a more local level helping people around you understand where they can advocate and how their voices can be powerful even if they're not experiencing the same limitations for their own kids?
I think it's really through destigmatizing mental health that every conversation I have, every time I speak somewhere, every time someone comes up and they recognize me, talking about mental health therapy as if it's not this huge big thing. It's just a fact of life. We have trauma. We have things we need to deal with. We need to process, um, and not normalizing it, and then that way taking away the power of the stigma. And locally, I've worked with been on NPR and talked at JPR. I've spoken a lot of places about it, but ultimately modeling that too through my own parenting. Um, it's really easy to, and I've seen it from other parents who've adopted. They can never really truly understand their children's trauma. Understanding that trauma is real, it is their real lived experience, and even though, and yes, a child does need to be held accountable for their behavior, absolutely. Um, but we still need to leave space for them to process the grief and trauma, and make that okay, make that normative instead of just toughen up, just tough it out. When I was a kid, you that's something a lot of my family and other millennials and hear from a lot from their parents. Well, I never thought to take you there. You didn't need it. I told you to toughen up and you did it. Yeah, because I was afraid. Because I didn't want to lose this or get punished or get spanked or you know giving our kids room to grieve, giving them room to make mistakes, um, modeling that as a parent is really the best way for me to make change. Because my daughter, yeah, would I ever be allowed to talk to my parents the way my daughter sometimes talks to me? Absolutely not. But why didn't I talk that way to my parents? Because I was scared.
Yeah.
She's not scared. My
Yeah.
kids aren't scared. They're not scared of us. And we talk about dignity and respect. We treat people with dignity and respect. Um, absolutely, and that's a learning process. But fear, it's a great motivator, but it's a horrible change maker. It's not
Yeah.
going to change behavior.
Yeah.
And that's the way I want to model on a local level, really, really super local, hyper local, in my own house and family is how I raise my kids. Even kids who to oldest who you're getting into adulthood now who may cannot comprehend or understand what we've done for them, but we're still there. We're still fighting for them, even if they don't want it. Um, and understanding that yes, they need to be held accountable for their behavior, but what they've had to go through, no child should have to go through.
Right.
And yeah,
Well, and I think too, when you say holding someone accountable for their behavior in this day and age still smacks of the punishment and control paradigm that we're dealing with, both from when we were kids and from the generation before and before and before, and even in schools, right? There's
Hmm.
such an emphasis on controlling the environment and behavior management that we fail to remember that behavior is a messenger. It's a communication device that
Yes.
says, this kid doesn't have capacity for what's going on within them, and they need a safe container. They need a person who can hold space for them to fall apart and
Yeah.
not condemn them for being ill-equipped to deal with something brand new to them. And
Yeah.
that's believing that every piece of context of that child's life is healthy and
Hmm.
supported and doing okay.
And it has to filter down even to our educational systems. I know my youngest daughter, she is a genius. She's, testing at the highest, 99 percentile, all this. Last year, she had an issue where she just was bored in class. She wasn't being challenged, and she started acting out a little bit. She's very sneaky and conniving and funny, and she tries to, pull pranks and tricks on people. And our teacher last year was very kind of had a boomer way of teaching, for lack of a better term. And one day on her page, she always got her work done way earlier. The teacher would get so mad at her for getting her work done, but she got it all done, and he would get more mad because it was all right. And on that same paper, she got her work done. She just kept writing, "I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored." She was writing out, and he just embarrassed her in front of the class, sent her to the principal's office. The principal called it. She shouldn't be writing them. And my wife and I, the answer was, my wife, who, she's a teacher, has a degree in bachelor's and master's in education. We're like, why are you asking us about, why is she doing this? Why aren't you asking us what's the problem? Why is she doing this? Why do you just want to punish her? If she's writing, she's bored, and she's getting her work done, and it's all right. Then she's bored. Then we need to find out what we need to do for her. Instead, it's this punitive model. Gotta punish, gotta punish, gotta punish, gotta get you in line, get you in line. Um, and that has to change from school systems to, into the home, every aspect. Um, if a child is acting out, why? Why
Yeah.
are they acting out? What's the root of that? My daughter was acting out, and she wasn't struggling in school at all because she was bored
Yeah.
and she wanted to be challenged. And we put her in a different school, and it's been great. But um, yeah, it's been a real challenge.
I think one of the things about that that's I mean, that's super relatable. My daughter is similar in behavior and in intelligence, and she will always err on trying to be respectful, be positive, be kind, be present, and make sure everyone's doing the, quote unquote, right thing. And in a classroom model that looks at behavior management, she is often the one that's disciplined because she's the last voice that's heard, right? She's the one that after three times says, "Hey, could you please stop?" She raises her voice, "Hey, stop." So, similar to your question, why is she acting this way? My question is always, what was happening right before? What's the context? And are you supporting the kids to explore what's going on with them? Or if they need a different opportunity or environment, how are you managing that? And we've been really fortunate with incredible teachers for the most part. um, but there's always going to be one or two that sneak in and misunderstand the use, to your point earlier about fear as a good motivator and shame as a teacher, as opposed to curiosity and letting them have the opportunity to really explore, like, what makes you inspired internally. Not, are you afraid of being punished because the
Mhm.
principal's office can be a scary threat, or are you ashamed of who you are becoming or what you did, instead of, actually, you're a kid who doesn't have a grid for understanding of what's going on inside you, because these are big emotions, and frankly most of the adults around you have no idea how to handle their own big emotions. Why would we expect you at 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 to know how to do it?
Exactly, exactly, and that's a mindset that has to change. Um, and the amount of times I've heard, I was in a meeting yesterday. We were talking about something different, but you could see the generations in the room at
Mm-hmm.
this meeting. Well, in my day, we never, in my day, Okay, but this is now. This is 2025. This is not
Yeah.
1985. We're not, that hasn't worked out from you because you're emotionally stunted and, so let's move on and be more healthy about these things.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's really curious to me. And so I guess I would just ask you what your advice is for someone who is in similar situations, whether they're in Southern Oregon or not. We know this kind of demographic exists all across the country. And the ability to emphasize mental health as a priority right now is maybe a little bit harder to bring up because there's so much vitriolic rhetoric happening where
Hmm.
mental health, I even just today, speaking of in social media, right? I made a little video of my own just saying like grief is not a weakness. You are allowed to feel this, right? Because that is something that most of my clients will say without realizing they're supporting it. I am weak because I am grieving and can't get this under control,
Hmm.
right? That mentality is not accurate. And it comes from a whole lot of foundation that we've set. So, what would you recommend to someone who is in a similar boat, asking similar questions, like as a resource where they can learn how to start? Or maybe what books or people you were listening to or reading that helped you recognize, this is a good way forward beyond the expressing my frustration and calling, because those are necessary steps too.
I realize this is prohibitive for some people, and I hate that because I believe mental health care is healthcare and healthcare is a right.
Mhm.
Therapy,
Yeah.
going to therapy, talking these things out with someone from the outside, has been the most life-changing thing for me. And it is so amazing to me, especially cis straight men who see that as a weakness, who see that as a waste of time. I've literally been on panels and debates where I've had a grown man who has traveled the world that told me because I go to therapy, I am less of a man and I am weak, which couldn't be any further from the truth. That has been my biggest resource, my biggest point of strength, my biggest place where I've grown the most.
Mm.
And whatever that looks like, and I understand, because of costs, it's prohibitive for a lot of people. Um, but also there are other resources. There's the parasocial community, which can be tough sometimes, but has been really good for me in a lot of ways. There are support groups. NAMI Southern Oregon has been great. They have support groups for parents in grief and um, all kinds of things. But ultimately, find a way to really have someone ask you the tough questions because any therapist or counselor or coach, they're not going to give you the answers. They're not. They're going to ask you the questions. My therapist asked me, "Why don't you try hiking?" Why don't I? Okay.
Mhm.
Any good therapist does that. Now they might give you some things to try, but ultimately, a therapist is not going to fix your own problems. The therapist is going to help you work through it yourself,
Mm.
help you heal yourself in a lot of ways, help you see past, you know, the crap that you can't see because you're too close.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny. I was hiking with my daughter Izzy on Monday after school. She went and said, "I want to go hike up Lower Table Rock. I haven't been up there." I'm like, "Okay, awesome." I've probably hiked Lower Table Rock. I mean, she asked me. I'm like, I probably hiked it 4 or 5 dozen times. Like, it's nothing. It was, and people don't realize that particular hike, especially the last part. Like, it's a leg burner. Like, it'll get you.
Mm.
Like, oh my gosh, it's so steep. And she's just head down, going. Like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And we get up to the top. We go hike all the way all across the top, come back, and we do the first two switchbacks back down. And she looks up. She's like, "I hiked up that." I'm like, "Yeah, you did. You were too close before. You were looking down. You couldn't see. But then when you got some perspective, you looked up. You're like, oh wow, I did
Mm.
that." And I think that's what therapy did for me. Is it gave me perspective that I couldn't see because I was too close. My head was down. I couldn't get my head up. And so when people started asking the right questions and pointing out certain things, I was able to see things that I couldn't see before.
Yeah.
Um, so that it, it's a cliche, go to therapy, I know, but it has been so life changing for me, and I would love to see it just be more accessible for people. There's online things people can do. I've worked with some of those, and there's a lot of controversy around the the, the billing model for those. I know, but whether it's a therapist or a spiritual leader, or you gotta be careful with those, um, or whatever or whatnot. Um, have have someone you can talk to, a counselor, a trusted person, and
Yeah.
really work through these things. And there are resources out there like NAMI and Mental Health America, and I'm a member of the Mental Health Coalition. I'm one of their champions, um, to find those resources.
I think what you're describing is that trusted adult, that trusted person, that trusted safe individual that can be a mirror back to you, right? It doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily have to be a paid uh, person, although because of education and training, they can be a very different type of mirror that you might need.
Yeah.
But when it comes to having the capacity to open up, you're looking for someone that you can attune with. And I know for myself in my own experience when I was younger, and for many people I know, the discouraging part of realizing, oh, I have to kind of date these therapists in the sense of I have to go a few times and figure out, is this a good
Hmm.
fit?
Yep.
When your insurance, if you're insured, covers 4 visits and you spend 3 of those realizing, I hate this guy and I
Yep.
don't want to be mean and say no, but I'm getting nothing out of it.
Yep.
There are so many, and now we've opened the entire can of worms, the whole case of can of worms of all the issues that exist and that need to be reevaluated. But to that point, that's actually something that people like me do with others is we show up and say, I might not be the right fit. Let me help you find someone who is. I know what kind of questions to ask that you might not even know are the right questions that could help you. And so
Hmm.
to your point, even looking at like parasocial relationships, realizing resources exist. It is vulnerable to ask for them or to
Hmm.
look for them. And in my vulnerability, I will find strengths and
Yep.
opportunities and places of that need growth and need care. And we
Hmm.
can't function outside of vulnerability with any expectation of health, personally.
Yeah.
That's just a strong opinion I stand on all the time. But um, I love that your daughter went hiking with you. I love that she was like, hey, dad, let's go do this thing that you love to do. That's like every parent's dream, our child
Yes.
leaning toward our hobbies. How have your beautiful children seen you advocating and seen you working so diligently and intentionally on your behalf, on their behalf, and begun to internalize what that can be, what that can mean for themselves in the world?
That's a tough question, because I think for my oldest, because of the trauma, she can't see it.
Mm,
She refuses to see it. Though everyone, from her lawyer to her therapist, um, on down, tell her, like, you
yeah.
realize what your father's doing? You realize what your mom's doing? Your mom quit her job to advocate for you. Your dad is taking his platform that he charges literally $10,000 a post to rage against the governor and bring attention to these issues to try to give you help.
Yeah.
She can't see it. My son can verbalize it. He sees it. I think he enjoys the attention too. He's like, oh, yeah, I met this person. They said they know who you are. And I told them, like, I used to go on hikes with you and this and that. And um, my daughter, my youngest daughter, is my 12-year-old. Uh, I've seen the biggest change in her because she sees it. She sees the impact. She's been, as we've tried to get our two oldest there, the help they needed, she's been in the background watching. And we've realized, and we're going through a healing process right now. Our oldest is in a adult transitional living home. Our middle is in a disability services home because he needs 24/7 care.
Mm,
And so we've had this time where with our youngest we've never had before, because she's always been in the background. Sorry, sorry, as we can't deal with you. We got to deal with your brother's behavior, your sister's behavior. They're raging. We have to call the police. We have to call 998. We have to do it. It was scary there for several years.
mm,
It still is, actually. It's just not in our home anymore.
mm.
And she's made several comments to us, the last few weeks, actually, about you don't parent like other parents.
Mm.
You let me make mistakes. You let me talk about my emotions. I like that
Wow.
because she sees her friends' parents, they're not allowed to bring up different issues, whether, she has a friend right now who's struggling with their sexual identity. She's like, they can't talk about that with their parents, but I know I can come to you with that.
Mm.
Or the way you guys deal with your anger is so much different than like I see grandma and grandpa, and they deal with their anger differently. I'm like, yeah, like wow. Um, and also being a middle schooler, 12-year-old, she very much she's into the whole, influencer world. She gets to go to VidCon with me this year, and she gets to meet all our favorite influencers. Um, but she's like, yeah, you're not just trying to sell, sell this or that. You're actually trying to make a difference. And she was able to articulate, you just use these brand deals so we can have a good life and you can keep doing and advocating for what you're doing. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. Um, you know, it'd be nice, go out and, just take whatever money people throw at me, but I have much more integrity than that. Though I never want to criticize anyone for getting their bag because, you do the work, get paid. At the same time, it's like, I'm not going to sell out just for money because I have a goal. I want to get people outside. I want to destigmatize mental health. I want to make sure that everyone understands that the outdoors is for everybody. Um, and it's been just really cool to see these little light bulbs go off in our head about what
Hmm.
we do. Even Medford's a small town, Ashland's a small town. I get stopped a freaking lot, and I don't mind it. Um, but when someone comes up to me and they have tears in their eyes, like thank you so much. You got me off the couch and I went for a hike, or you changed the way I think about the outdoors, or you've changed the way I think about mental health. She sees that, and she has said, you're doing a lot of good, Dad,
Mm.
and you know that's been the coolest thing. You know, to see that she can we are a safe place for her.
Mm-hmm.
And as she's getting into middle school, there's that fear of she's going to draw away, and that there's a part of that that's natural. Kids need to a certain extent pull back from their parents and assert their independence, absolutely. But to know that we are that safe space for her, and that we are working so she can have a better future, so her brother and sister can have a better future. um, and see just recently those light bulbs go off in her head has been really, really cool. And she's wanted to go hiking with me twice this week. We're going again tomorrow. Um, it's awesome, and she's just challenging herself um, and understanding the benefits of it. Her biggest thing is like, I don't so much like the hike. I just like sitting at the viewpoint eating snacks. But you got to hike to it first. I'm like, perfect.
Same girl, same.
Yeah, just let's get up there, and we'll sit up there for an hour, and then we'll hopefully not slide around the mud because it's spring in Oregon, so everything's
Yeah.
muddy. But
Yeah. Oh, speaking of that mirror, just reflecting back where you're at, where your attention needs to go, to have someone who relies on you for their well-being reflect back, you're making space for me to be well,
mhm,
is such an incredible affirmation. And I think too what you said about identifying how you're using your voice in the world. There's nothing wrong with selling gummy vitamins for hair growth or yeah, who knows? I don't know. I don't pay attention, but there's nothing wrong with that because
mhm,
people need to support themselves. And
yep,
yet, when you recognize I can go beyond the surface level
mhm,
of sales and advocacy, I can use marketing for good and not for just self-sustaining
mhm,
purposes. It's a really powerful place to be. I'll tell you this. My daughter, she's about to start middle school as well. And as someone who is definitely not as forward facing or like public facing as or recognizable, I do have a book out there and she knows what I do. And I led worship in the valley for 16 years. So there are a lot of people I know
oh yeah,
too.
I was a pastor in the valley for 10 years.
Yeah,
I know that. I know that.
a
Yeah.
small valley. And there are days when she was littler that she would say, Mommy, are you like famous? Are you and daddy both like famous? Are you making a big deal? Like, I feel like you're a big deal. And we would say, No, of course not, sweetheart. We know a lot of people because of our work or whatever. And yet to this day, she'll be like, No, my mom changes people's lives. Like that's her
That's awesome.
understanding. That's her synopsis, right? And it is so clear. that your youngest, but honestly, I believe even your middle and your oldest child at some point have that same narrative in their head. Wow, my dad's changing lives. And it might
Hmm.
be mine, and I might not care right now because I'm mad at everything and I don't have the grid for how to handle that. And that's
Yep.
okay. But we have to believe that when we can have even the little things reflected back to us, that those are actually like objects in this mirror are closer than they appear kind of things, right? Like it's a
Hmm.
distortion because it's reflected and it may seem really small, but it's actually quite large and
Hmm.
huge and life altering for people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, Andy, everyone now knows and will know that they can find you at Andy Films and Hikes on
Yep.
Instagram, social media,
Yep.
and you're blowing up on YouTube because you're kind of a big deal and you're making a big deal about important things, which is necessary. Is there anything else that you want our listeners to consider or to take action on your behalf after we are done?
Yeah, you can Andy Films and Hikes every single platform you can think of. That's what it is. And ultimately, I want people to understand it's okay to not be okay.
Mm,
That's you boil everything I say and do down. It's okay to not be okay. And I want people to really grapple with that and understand that and take that to heart. And it's always amazing to me when I talk to people how this stigma of mental health and we're talking about your own vulnerabilities is still out there. Being in this mental health world, I forget like, oh wow, there's a whole lot of people out there who still think it's not okay to talk about your vulnerabilities.
yeah,
Um, and I put it out online. I don't put everything out online. You know, my life is still my life, but I wear I wear my heart on my sleeve, and you know, I have no qualms about that. And to actually see how much good it's done, I think a lot of us could, the world could be a much better place if we're just honest with ourselves and with each other and uh, admitting it's okay to not be okay.
yeah. Andy, thank you again so much for the work you're doing, for your advocacy, for being willing to turn your entire life toward the vulnerability of others and what they need and how to build a better system for them and especially for our kiddos. It's just such an honor to share the valley with you and to see all the beautiful places you're reminding me I exist near and I can go hike myself. And I'm just so grateful for your work. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to episode 191 of Restorative Grief. I hope you are, number one, planning your next hike, and number two, taking notes about how to create an environment that fosters vulnerability and compassion for both yourself and for the children in your life who may or may not be aware that there are things they struggle with. Mental health advocacy is so necessary every single day in every single area of this globe. And maybe not for the animals, but who am I to say? Mental health is health, and healthcare is a right that we all deserve access to. So if you are in a position to speak up on behalf of those without access or support organizations that provide access, please help today. There are links in the show notes if that's something you ought to learn more about or just don't know where to begin with. And certainly you can make sure to follow Andy on social media at Andy Films and Hikes everywhere you can imagine. If this is your first time listening to the show, thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about the mental health needs of people around you. I think that's why you're here in the first place, because grief literacy changes our lives for the better. Please be sure to subscribe to the show, and if you haven't done so, leave a 5-star review, because that is what helps other people find this work in the first place. And that's the whole reason we're doing it, to create more resources for those who don't have as much access, either by proximity to mental health support or through financial limitations. Reach out if you're interested in learning more about how to become a patron of the show, and if you are, don't forget the workbook for this episode. It's fantastic, if I do say so myself. And as always, before we go, one last thing. Please remember, the only solution for grief is to do the work of grieving. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week.